What's up, guys? Your Doomsday here, and today, if you guys did not know, the patch notes for update 3.10 were actually leaked. So today, what we're going to be doing is breaking down each change and talking about how it affects the game in the meta. So this update, there are huge changes, including a new hero and pretty much a rework to the entire 3v3 game mode, which we will get to later in this video. So with this video, let's try to get 1,500 subs. And let's get 300 likes too. For part 2 for the patch notes, since they're actually too long to make into one video, and there's so many huge impactful changes, that this update, we're going to focus on meta changes and the general changes, and then in the next update, we're going to be talking about individual hero balance changes. So, first off, let's just start off with a new hero that's coming out this update. So sadly, I don't have any gameplay, since to get early access and beta for upcoming things, you actually need to have about 2,000 subscribers. But I do have the abilities and specifics and numbers for this hero. So first off, the new hero's name is Ylva. I think that's how you say it, Ylva. And it's actually a ranged carry instead of a melee. But the perk for her, it's called Hunter Sense. And pretty much Ylva can tell where enemies are based off waves that radiate towards her as long as they're moving towards her. So this only works if the enemies are moving, and will stop working if the enemy stops moving. And then that's pretty much all that her perk does. And then the first ability is Charge Shot. Pretty much what it does is it starts to charge up her weapon, and then after 1.6 seconds of charging it up, you could basic attack it and hit an enemy with it and it'll stun them. The catch is though that whenever Ilva is charging up this weapon, she's slowed by about 30%, and she won't be able to hold the charge and just run around, or else she's going to be way slower. But instead, you actually have to use the charge wisely and at correct times. Also, if you basic attack before the charge finishes in 1.6 seconds, the attack will not stun the enemy at all. And the overdrive for this ability cuts the charge time from 1.6 seconds to 1.2 seconds, so you don't have to wait as long for the stun to actually occur. This ability is also nice since the cooldown is short, and the ability has both weapon power and CP ratios, meaning that you could build either weapon power or crystal power, and this ability will do a decent amount of damage. Ilva's second ability is actually Crimson Fang, and she jumps to her target and deals a massive blow that does more damage to immobilized targets, and then she gains a movement speed afterwards for 3 seconds, and extra attack speed along with it. So if you didn't know, an immobilized target is someone that's like rooted or stunned, and pretty much the damage that this ability does almost doubles whenever used on a target that's stunned or rooted. And once this ability is overdriven, the range of it actually goes from 5.5 to 7.5 tiles. And like the first ability, this ability also has a crystal power and weapon power ratio, so it can be built on either paths. So the final ultimate ability for Ilva is Binding Mine, and this ability takes place when you use it, and it places a mine that disappears after 2 seconds, so the enemy can't see it after 2 seconds of it being used. And when someone walks over it, the mine actually explodes, dealing damage to enemies in a 6-tile radius and roots everybody in that range too. However, there can only be one mine placed at a time, and after a minute, the mine actually disappears. So the cooldown on this ultimate's very short though, but it only has a CP ratio, so you have to build crystal to make it do damage. Or else, as weapon power, it will just do the base damage of the ability. And the upgrades just increase the root duration and the damage and reduces the cooldown on it, pretty much. Okay, so now that we've covered the new hero, let's get on to the actual meta changes for the patch notes. So first off with this update, there's the release of the new in-game chat. I actually made a video on all the pros and cons of this new in-game chat, and now we can actually see if this is going to work out well in the community. So to try and reduce toxicity, you could disable this feature in the settings, and to use this you actually have to have great karma. So if y'all haven't seen, there's also a new home screen That looks so cool, and it'll actually be used in this next update. Okay, so now on to the changes. The first thing that's being changed are bounties. If y'all don't know what bounties are, each hero is worth a certain amount of gold whenever you kill them, and the more kills and longer that the enemy has been alive, the more gold that they'll be worth whenever you kill them. So pretty much what this means is you will get more gold if you kill somebody that has 4 kills instead of someone that just has 1. But the problem with bounties this patch was that the max you can get from a large bounty was 1,000 gold, which is an absurd amount of gold. And this hurts heroes that were strong early game, since if you have a max bounty since you're strong early game, you have 4 kills, but then like a Celeste ends up killing you, the enemy can get so much gold. And pretty much now you can't do nothing because the enemy gets a crap load of items from that. And it pretty much just kills early game heroes so quickly. So to fix this, what they're trying to do is they're trying to reduce the amount of gold that a normal kill is worth. And they're also decreasing how much gold is added to the bounty for every kill that the enemy gets. Also, they're decreasing the amount of gold that first blood is worth. Okay, so now onto the 3v3 meta. There were some of the biggest changes ever made this patch. First off, the amount of ambient gold in lane and jungle were both decreased, which hurts the captain, mostly, since they rely off of ambient gold in the lane to get all their items. And also now it'll be way less effective to have both your jungler and your carry take the jungle, since the carry can barely get any ambient gold. But to try and make up for this, the price for captain items are actually lowered, so captains having less gold doesn't really matter as much. So, on to the next thing. They're increasing the amount of trickle gold in 3v3 from 5 gold to 6 gold. And they're also increasing the trickle experience from 0.8 to 1. Pretty much trickle experience in gold, it's just the amount of gold that you get automatically per second without doing anything. So now you get more gold and experience per second passively. And the experience needed to level up is less now, meaning that it's way easier to get levels. And also the jungle will now show up whenever monsters spawn. So, like in 5v5 how they have the timers, it's going to be the same thing in 3v3 now. So pretty much all that happens is there is more passive experience given, and there's less experience needed to level up. So now everybody can level up faster and way quicker. So one of the bigger changes is the death timers have changed so much. The death timers are just how long it takes to respawn after you get killed. Pretty much it's the same to start off with at the game, and it's still about 5 seconds to respawn. But now, instead of the 25 seconds it normally takes to respawn at 13 minutes, it'll take 25 seconds to respawn at 8 minutes now. And instead of 60 seconds to respawn at 24 minutes, it's 60 seconds to respawn at 18 minutes. This is an insane change. This means that dying actually means more now, since you won't respawn for a longer amount of time. And we'll see the reasoning for this change in a little bit when we get to an even bigger change. But let's just cover over this quickly. Pretty much whenever you recall, you get a speed boost to help you get to lane or to jungle quickly. And also whenever the match starts, you get a speed boost too. And all it did was increase how long the speed boost lasts and the amount of speed that it gives. So it'll help you get back to wherever you want to be quicker whenever you recall or whenever you spawn. So let's go on to the 3v3 lane minions now. What they're going to be adding is captain minions like in 5v5, but instead they're going to be adding to 3v3. And they're going to spawn every 4th waves. And now minions are going to spawn 2 seconds slower. So they're going to take longer to spawn. But to make up for this, there's going to be a 5th minion that's added to each wave. That's a ranged minion. Since the slower the minion waves spawn, the less minions that'll appear since it takes longer for them to get to lane. But an extra 5th minion evens it out, so even though they spawn 2 seconds slower, the extra minion makes up for it. So also they've changed the minions. So the minions start to level up at 3 minutes instead of 4 minutes. and they also level up way quicker. If you didn't know, all leveling up does to minions is make it so they're way more tanky and that they do more damage. This is also to accompany the huge change which we'll be explaining later this video. So now we're going to move on to the amount of gold and experience that minions give out, and these will also be reduced too, which will make it harder for laners to level up and get gold. But remember how that now you need less experience to level up, and also there's more trickle golden experience, so it's trying to even it out. So that was about it for the laning for 3v3, so now we can move on to the jungle for 3v3. The jungle timer is actually changed now so that both bears and treants spawn slower, and also there's a larger gap between the time it takes for them to spawn, so they won't spawn right after each other, but instead it'll take longer for the treants to spawn than bears. And also they changed it so now these monsters can only be dragged a certain amount. So once they hit a certain point, they'll stop chasing you and just go back to their original spot. So the jungle will start to level up at level 3 now instead of 2 minutes and 15 seconds, but they level up way quicker even though they start leveling up later. So eventually they're going to get stronger and they're going to reach max level, which went down from 12 to 7 for the levels, way faster than before just because they level up so much quicker. Also, a big change is that the Elder Treant despawns at 3:45 instead of 3 minutes and 58 seconds in, which we will also see why later. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the biggest changes for update 3.10 for 3v3. First off, let's start off with the Crystal Miner. The Crystal Miner no longer walks home from base, so once it respawns, it appears back in the jungle. And the Crystal Miner also has no lives now, meaning that you can never completely kill it and it'll always be there no matter what. And the amount of time for the Crystal Miner to respawn is 90 seconds now instead of 60. And we're going to look at why it's 90 seconds now. So the entire concept of the Crystal Miner will change with this update. In the past, the Crystal Miner didn't really mean much at all, and most teams will just not care if it gets killed, and there's no incentive at all to try and protect it in the late game since it didn't really do much at all. But now once you kill the Crystal Sentry, the killer gets a huge buff, but to make it harder to kill the Crystal Sentry, it'll do 15% more damage, and it'll take less damage, so it'll be more tankier, and it'll also slow enemies by 25%. So, remember how the respawn time of the Crystal Miner is 90 seconds now instead of 60 seconds? So this buff actually lasts for 90 seconds. So, once you kill the Crystal Sentry, you get the buff, and then the buff ends right as the next Crystal Sentry spawns. So now killing the Crystal Miner is actually huge for scaling, and it's something that you need to consider on how to defend and when to take it before team fights. So we're going to be looking at the Gold Miner now. It's going to actually despawn at 11 minutes and 45 seconds instead of 15 minutes that it was before, for a huge reason which we're going to get to right after this. So it takes 30 seconds to respawn now instead of 10, but it starts off with 50 gold in it, so it doesn't make a difference, since now it starts off with gold, but it spawns a little bit later. Also, the gold generated by the Gold Miner is increased, so you can actually reach max gold on it way quicker. Now for the biggest change to 3v3. The Kraken spawn time has changed from 15 minutes to 12 minutes, and the respawn time is half of what it used to be. A 90-second respawn time on Kraken. Imagine capturing a Kraken, and then once you finish pushing with it, all you have to do is wait a little bit over a minute to try and capture another one, and then keep on pushing. Now, I'm just gonna go and skip over the health and defense changes for jungle monsters. But pretty much what happens is the entire jungle gets way more tanky, and they also get more health per level, and it gives out way more gold, like almost twice as much as gold. But the gold miner stats, the health has almost doubled now, and it'll have eventually twice as much health once it finishes leveling up. It also deals so much more damage now, but it actually gives experience once you end up killing it. So the Kraken has so much more health now, but it has less defense and does not take less damage from basic attacks. And the damage starts off low, but it increases as the Kraken levels up, but it's now worth less experience whenever you capture it. So from these changes, it seems that from everything they've changed, how it takes less experience and how you level up quicker, more gold in the jungle, shorter Kraken spawn, gold miner ending earlier. It looks like their goal is to make 3v3 a shorter, more action-packed game instead of the slower mode with matches that can last up to 30 minutes. In my opinion, I like this, since the reason why I like 5v5 so much is because there's more action and team fights in it. But with this change, the matches can be shorter and so much more fighting can happen, and I think that this will encourage people to play 3v3 again too. And then there's a bunch of changes to turrets too, which I really can't be bothered to waste your time explaining, since this is already such a long video. So if you want, you could just pause this and look over these, but all you pretty much need to know is to make sure to destroy the turrets, and then you could destroy the Vein Crystal and win the game. But finally now we can get onto 5v5 meta. The first thing that we're going to discuss is the river movement speed buff, which is going to be decreased. So if any of y'all didn't know, you actually get a speed buff if you're on the river. And if you're going to one of the side lanes from the middle lane, as long as you're running along with the current of the river. But up next, we have a huge change to ambient gold in 5v5 too. The amount of ambient gold in lane is decreased. So this hurts the captains, since they rely on ambient gold to get items. But later in the next video, we will see that there's going to be a decrease in the price of captain items to try and make up for this. So now for jungle ambient gold, this is completely taken away now. So there's no more ambient gold at all in the jungle. 0 gold for helping the jungler take the jungle. This makes it so junglers can actually have and claim their own jungle, and then lanes will be more 1v1 matchups, since the jungler will be taking jungle by themselves most of the time now. The main issue that I see now is in Wrangle or ranked games, people may be toxic and take the jungler, and then the jungler won't have any gold at all, since they won't even be able to get ambient gold from jungle at least, and you barely get any ambient gold from lane minions now too. But onto the jungle camps. The jungle camps start to level up later now, but they're going to be stronger at level 1. But by the time they reach the level 7, they're going to be the same strength as normal. So, first off, we're going to be looking at the healing treant. The amount of heal and energy and barrier that this gives is increased, which actually makes it so laners and junglers won't have to recall as much now, since they can actually get enough heal back, and they'll even get energy back too. But to counteract this, the healing treant is made way more tanky now, so it'll take longer to capture. And this means that you gotta manage your lane better, so you won't lose as much farm whenever you're taking the healing treant. The amount of gold given by melee minions and siege minions are actually decreased now by a little bit. And the gold for a captain minion is increased to 100. So now it's more important than ever to make sure that you last hit this, and to pressure your opponents whenever they're trying to last hit their captain minion, to try to make them miss it. So now we're going to be looking at the objective changes to 5v5, and both Ghostwing and Blackclaw are stronger whenever they're spawn, meaning that whenever teams try and group up as 5, right when one of these spawn, and they try and take it right away, it'll be a little bit slower and there's going to be more time for the opponent to react, and it's going to be harder for heroes to solo this objective too. But as the game goes on, they actually become less tanky than normal. But that's going to be about it for this video. Sadly, we're not able to go over the balance changes for each individual hero and item yet, since the meta and general changes were so long that I'm going to have to make another video on the heroes balance changes. But thanks for watching. Remember, let's try to hit 1,500 subs and 300 likes, and see you guys next time.